Hello and welcome back to Mr. Walker's Apes. Today we're going to be talking about succession, and this is ecological succession. So what I mean by that is when one ecosystem or community is replaced by another over time. Okay, this is going to be full of lots of vocabulary words. So I'll try and highlight those and just try and stick some meaning into your brain. Also, it might help to visualize what I'm talking about. So I've got some illustrations, but the more you can visualize, the better. Alright, so first thing, how do ecosystems respond to change? And like I said, we call this ecological succession. It's a gradual change in species composition over a given area. And there are two types, primary and secondary. Now, primary is what happens when you have near lifeless ground. So this would be some either major natural catastrophe or some major artificial catastrophe. So for example, primary succession would occur after a volcanic eruption that hasn't happened in some years, or if a town becomes abandoned, all the roads and parking lots and things where there were no life really begin to have grasses and things start to pop up. Okay, whereas secondary is more of this already had life, still has life, it's just been disturbed in a very severe way, and so we've got to reestablish a lot of things. Okay, so your two types of ecological succession are primary and secondary. So primary, where does it begin? Bare rock, because a glacier melted. Cooled lava, because a volcano erupted. Abandoned highway or parking lot. I said, all these things that if it's just barren, there's hardly any life there, whether it's artificial or natural, and now life begins to establish. So then, how do we do this? Okay, so there are steps to succession. First thing you need is soil. Alright, plants don't grow without soil. So, we have to get some, and this may take a very, very long time. Alright, if it's on bare rock, either the soil is going to have to blow in from an area, or the rock's going to have to weather and break down. So this can take a very long time. Generally, it takes about 400 years to form an inch of soil. Now, this can be accelerated, if the rock is softer or more easily weathered, but generally it takes a long time. So once you have soil, you can start to get some of these pioneer species in. Alright, there are hardly any organisms that attach themselves to bare rock because, it's just hard. So there are a few, though. There are a few, and these are your lichens and mosses. These will come in and help break down the rock. So once the soil starts to build up, we start to get early successional plant species. Okay, these can come in through the wind. Generally, they're blown in. Okay, and these are going to be small plants. They're not going to be trees. They're not going to be even grass yet. This is just going to be small little weedy-like things. Okay, that just can get some establishment going. They don't live very long. Okay, they're just going to grow up, produce seeds, die probably. So something like dandelion, dandelion is a perfect example. It grows close to the ground, doesn't live very long, wind dispersal, produces lots of seeds. Alright, and they can live just about anywhere. I have yet to see a place where a dandelion can't live, considering that I've seen them in parking lots and sidewalks and everything else. Alright, then you've got mid-successional plant species and late successional. Your mid-successional are grasses and low shrubs, things that you might see on a grassland. Alright, they need a little bit more soil than some of the early successional, but they can still survive. And then late are your trees. Okay, trees need the most amount of soil, the most amount of space, the most resources, etc. So they generally come in very late, and they grow up and then out-compete everything else. So you eventually create a forest. And ultimately that leads to a climax community, when you have a full forest with no shrublands or grasslands or anything like that. So here's an illustration, just showing how this goes through. Okay, so first you've got bare rock. Okay, looks like we've got some things growing on here. Alright, so if these are lichens and mosses, quick quiz, what type of species would these be in the whole series of things? Okay, then we've got some soil, so what types of plants would these be? Okay, then you've got more soil, and we've got a little bit of bigger stuff. What stage is this? And finally, lots of soil, big trees. What stage is this? Okay, so use this illustration as a little quiz. So in your notes, maybe draw something similar and put a timeline to it. So do we go from right to left or left to right? And label the different types of species here. Okay. Alright, so that's it for primary succession. Again, primary is where you've just got an area that's completely been destroyed and nothing lives there anymore, and now it's re-establishing a community. Whereas secondary is there was already a community, there's already lots of life, we've disturbed it. Alright, so property, some examples are abandoned farmland. It's been severely disturbed over however long the farm was there. Some, if you've cut down a forest, if you've really polluted a stream to where a lot of life has vanquished, or if I dam up a river, well, now you're going to flood the surrounding area, so that's going to have a drastic effect on the type of life that lives there. And that's it. So and for secondary, there's not really any steps. It's just over time, life will reestablish itself. So if you cut down all the trees, over time, the trees will return. It's just going to take a while. I mean, the shrubs and everything are still going to be there. So it's kind of the same steps. It's just you pick up from wherever you left off. So if it's an abandoned farm, you're probably picking up at the grasses stage. So you're picking up at early succession, and then you still need to go to mid and late. Whereas if you burn a forest, you just need to do the mid and late, or even maybe just the late succession. For streams, depends on how heavily polluted it is. If it's super polluted to where it wiped out all life, then you're starting back over. Okay, that would be a primary succession. If it's just enough to maybe kill the fish, then you just gotta wait for the fish to come back. Alright, so that's it. Primary, secondary succession. I don't feel like that should be it. Let's see. Yeah, let's just in case these words come up, let's go ahead and cover them. Alright, so if I have facilitation, okay, that's one species makes an area more suitable for another species. These are vocabulary words that might pop up somewhere. So facilitation, alright, you might see that quite a bit. Inhibition is just the opposite. Okay, one species keeps another from coming in through competition, or I don't know if you guys have ever been out to the desert creosote bushes. They produce a toxin so that no other plants can grow around them. Same thing with walnut trees. Walnut trees will produce a toxin in their roots so that nothing else can grow around them. They would inhibit the establishment and growth of other species. And then tolerance, okay, a late successional plant species that are unaffected from earlier stages. So if you you have that walnut tree, but then this plant is immune to that poison, doesn't matter, it's going to tolerate it. All right, and of course disturbance. You'll I mean, you guys know what disturbance is, so I'm not really going to talk about this too much. I do want to talk about this intermediate disturbance hypothesis, which is that communities experience fairly frequent disturbance will have the largest biodiversity. So this is the whole, wildfire thing. Wildfires are natural, and humans keep wildfires from happening because we don't want to risk that the fire begins to get out of control and burn down nearby communities of people. So, for the longest time, we just prevented all forest fires. Well, now they're starting to learn, well, if we just set controlled forest fires every decade or so, then not only does the ecosystem benefit, but the fires are not nearly as big, and they mainly just burn the underbrush, the dead leaves and small bushes, not the entire forest. And so that really actually is helping, because we don't have to worry about huge fires that are going to burn down communities of homes, and instead just burn the small stuff that we can put out relatively easily. Alright, so a little bit of stuff for you. Make sure that you can keep track of the different stages of succession, keep in mind the differences between primary and secondary succession, and keep in mind some of these vocabulary words like facilitation, inhibition, and tolerance. Okay, that's all for today. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.